Welcome back everybody. So in today's video I will be walking you through DBT snapshots and how to implement them on Snowflake Data Warehouse. Okay, so let's get to it. Okay, so like I mentioned in today's video, we will be going through DBT snapshots and how to implement them on Snowflake Data Warehouse. Before we jump into the demo, I will quickly walk you through a very high level overview of what DBT snapshots are. And once we are done with this, we will then jump into the demo. So I highly encourage you to stick around because we will be learning a lot in this video. Alright, so let's jump to it. So what are DBT snapshots? Okay, so DBT snapshots are used to capture and track changes to a table over time, and these are particularly useful if you are implementing slowly changing dimensions in your data warehouse in order to track historical changes for auditing, reporting, or analytics purposes. So see here, we have introduced a new term here called SCD, or a slowly changing dimension. This is a term that is used in data warehousing, that is used in order to track changes in your table. So if you have a historical table where you keep all of your history, this is one of the strategy that you can use in your data warehousing table. Okay, and we have three types of slowly changing dimensions. The first one that we have here is type 1. Okay, so slowly changing dimension type 1, and this one is used when you want to overwrite old data with new data. So in this case, the history is not preserved. Okay, so SCD type 1, or a type 1 in short, is used when you want to overwrite old data. So take an example of a table where you have changes coming in and you don't want to keep the previous data in your table, so you just want to overwrite the old table with the new data. So if you want to implement that type of strategy using SCD, then you can use what we call SCD type 1. Okay, and then the other one that we have here is SCD type 2, and this is the one that DBT uses. Okay, so DBT snapshots is basically SCD type 2, and in this type of strategy, this is the approach which adds a new record with the new data and preserves the old record as historical data. Okay, like again I mentioned, this is the most commonly used SCD, and this is again the one that DBT snapshots implements. Alright, so SCD type 2 is mostly very common. Okay, I've seen this a lot, and this is what a lot of companies prefer using. Okay, so in type 2, a new record is added, but also the old one is preserved for historical records. Okay, so this is very good if you want to track changes in your table in your data warehouse. Alright, so again, this is what we'll be implementing in this video. Type 2 is what a DBT snapshots implements. The third type of SCD that we have is type 3, and this approach adds a new column for the new data and preserves the old data in the original column. We will not be going through this, but if you want to read, I will put a link in the description where you can read more about slowly changing dimensions in data warehousing. It's a very popular feature, and a lot of companies use it, and they like you to have this knowledge. Okay, so we will be using DBT snapshots in this video now to implement type 2. Okay, so now let's proceed. And what are the key features of DBT snapshots? All right, so one of the key feature right here is historical data tracking. DBT snapshots store both current and historical states of your record, making it easy to track changes. Okay, so this is what I mentioned, and again, this is SCD type 2. So what the DBT snapshot does, because it implements type 2, is whenever there are changes in your data, it will keep the previous records for you in your table, and so that in future if you want to track changes, then you can go back and see how your data changed over time. All right, so this is a very good feature again, so it helps you to track your historical changes. And then the other thing is it also helps you to implement your SCD types. Okay, and we went over the three types, and in this case snapshots are primarily designed for SCD type 2, and this will be tracking changes while preserving history. But if you want to implement the other types, that is type 1 and type 3, you can write custom SCD logic within DBT to implement this. Okay, and then the other feature for snapshots is incremental processing. Okay, so snapshots will check for changes in your source data and only update records that have changed, and this will improve efficiency. And I will be showing you in the demo that I will be going through over in this video. What DBT Snapshots does is it will scan your source data once it creates. So the first time it does it, it will create your snapshot table in your data warehouse, and then after that it will now scan your source table, and whenever there are changes, then it will just process those newly changes and update your existing table accordingly. All right, so this is good also if you want to process data incrementally. Okay, and now let's go through some SCD examples. So here, this is type 1. So for type 1, this is an example. All right, so let's take an example of a table that has these three columns, right? So we have a table with ID and a status of and a status and also updated that. So let's take, maybe this is an orders table, and this is a table that you use to track orders that is coming into your shop. And so we have an ID, order ID with ID number 1, and the original status was pending, and this was updated on this date, right? And now this order has changed and the status now is shipped. Okay, so let's assume on the 2nd 2025 January 2nd, this record updated to shipped. Now with SCD type 1, what happens is, instead of another record being created, basically this record is overwritten, right? So you can see here it's overwritten, and now the status here has changed to shipped. Okay, so the same ID is overwritten and is updated with the new status. Okay, so in this case we are changing it to shipped, and the updated timestamp here changes to the new change date. Okay, now with type 2, the scenario is different, right? So let's say we have the same table, right? We have the same table with ID number 1 and the status of pending, and this was the original updated date, right? And now when this status changes to shipped, what DBT does, right? Because when you run the very first time, DBT will create a table for you in your target database, and so DBT snapshot, right? So when it creates it and also adds additional tracking fields, and two of the tracking fields that will be created in your snapshot table are these two here, DBT valid from and DBT valid to. Okay, and these are basically used so that your data can be fashioned correctly. And in this case, we can see that the original order here, when it was created with these two columns here, and it was valid from 2025 January. So basically it will put the date when it was created as valid from and valid to, right? Actually, as we can see in this video, and I will show you, DBT valid to, in our case, the very first time it's created will be null, right? It will be null. And when we now change the status of this table to shipped, which is coming in on the 2nd of January, this status changes to shipped. What DBT does when you run your snapshot is it's going to update this table, the existing table in your data warehouse, and it's going to now expire, right? It's going to expire the original column. So you can see here DBT valid to now will be expired, and it's going to expire on this date, and now the new one will be starting from the 2nd. I think actually this one will be, let's change this one will be valid to the 2nd right here. Yeah, this because the original one will be valid from 2025-01, right? That was the original date. And when you change this, then the next valid from date will be the 2nd, and this one will be valid until the 2nd, and then the new one starts on the 2nd, and now this one will be a most recent record right here. Okay, and don't worry about this, it will make more sense once we do the demo, and I'll be showing you how this one will work in the demo. Okay, so just stick around. If this one is still not making sense yet, it will make more sense once we go into the demo. All right, and then we proceed right here, and so these are the DBT snapshot strategies. So there are some strategies that you need to implement in your DBT snapshots, and we have two strategies. We have timestamp strategy and check strategy. Okay, so timestamp strategy is used when your source data includes a timestamp column. And if you saw in the previous example I was using you, an example of a timestamp column there is the updated at. Okay, so if you just want to track your changes based on when it changed, right? If you want to track your, for example, this strategy here, right? This strategy is useful when you want to track changes based on when they occurred. Okay, so if you just want to use the time when changes occurred on your data, then you can use the timestamp strategy. Again, this DBT strategy, this timestamp strategy will create a new snapshot record whenever the timestamp column is more recent than the last time the snapshot was run. Okay, so this is an important point here, right? If you use a timestamp strategy, what happens is DBT will only use that column to check for changes. So if there is any change in any of the other column, say for example, in our case we had right, so let me just show you that. So let's say in our example here, right, so what DBT timestamp does, right, it's only going to use this this updated at in this case. So it's only going to look at this column, and whenever there are changes in this column, so in this case, for example, we had updated at here, and then the next updated timestamp is this one here. So whenever there's a change in this field here, then it's going to only bring the changes for those and fashion it in your data warehouse. Now, assuming this does not change, but one of these other fields changes, then with timestamp strategy, DBT will not track that. Okay, so that's very important. If you're using timestamp, then make sure that the timestamp actually changes. Otherwise, other changes in your data will be recorded, but will not be reflected in your type 2 snapshot table. Okay, and the other one now that we have here is check strategy, right? So check strategy is used when you want to track changes based on the values of specific columns. Okay, and this strategy will create a new snapshot record whenever the values in the specified columns are different from the last time the snapshot was run. So this strategy is useful when you want to track changes based on what changed rather than when it changed. Okay, so again, in this case, what you're doing here is you can specify the columns that you want to track. So in this case, let's say we are tracking ID and status. So what the DBT does is it's going to listen to these fields, and if any of this value changes, then it's going to fashion it. It's going to retire it and give you and create a new record here in your snapshot table, and expire the old ones. Okay. Now this is different from timestamp, because what timestamp does is only listens to the timestamp column that you have specified. So if you're not sure whether there is a timestamp, whether the timestamp column is reliable in your data, then you can use the check strategy. And I think a lot of people like the check strategy if they're not sure again of whether the timestamp is reliable or not. So you just want to make sure that the strategy that you're using is you're confident with it. If you're not confident with the timestamp, then I will recommend that you use the check strategy. Okay, so both of them will just work fine, as long as you know which fields are changing and you want to track in your data warehouse. Okay, so that's a very high level overview of DBT snapshots, and now let's jump over to the demo. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to my browser right here now, and like I mentioned in this video, we will be using Snowflake to implement our DBT snapshots. Alright, so I'm then going to log into my Snowflake account right here, and right here I'm logged into my Snowflake account. If you don't have Snowflake account, you can go ahead and sign up for one. It's not very expensive, and I think if you're a first-time user, you get, I believe it's 15 or 30 days of free credit, and once that expires, you can continue using Snowflake. You just need to put your bank account. It's not very expensive. I've been using it for, I believe, over 4 years now, and I just use it on and off. And the good thing with Snowflake is when you're not using it, then you're not getting billed, and even when you're using it, running your queries, the data, the virtual data warehouse that you'll be using, which is your compute cluster here, is not very expensive, because you can configure it to terminate after a very, like let's say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, if you're not actively using it. So it's not very expensive. So this is my Snowflake data warehouse, and so since I'm here, I've went ahead and created a database here. Okay, so you can just go to databases or go to data here and create a database. I just created a database here for DBT ELT, and inside this database I created staging schema. So this is where we will be putting our staging table that we will use to run our snapshots on. And also I created this target schema here called his, and this is now where we'll be writing our snapshots tables to. Okay, so I'll just, this will make sense in a minute. We'll just go ahead. So again, this will be where our raw data will be living, and this is where our historical tables, which is the snapshots, will live in. Okay, so just take a note of this. And now the other place where I want to show you is AWS S3. Okay, so I'm going to log into my AWS environment, and we will be using S3 to store our data. Okay, so I have a bucket here in S3, and inside this bucket here I will be storing my data inside orders. Okay, so I have a file that I have manually created in my local folder, and I will be uploading it here to this location right here. And so let's go actually over to that file, the file that we will be using in this video. I will quickly walk you through over that file. And so that file is located right here. I will open this file in I will open this file in Excel right here. Okay, so this is how this file looks like, and I will zoom this file here. Okay, so this file, if you're wondering how I got it, I used ChatGPT to generate this file, but you can use any file that you want. And if you want to know some of the websites or sources where you can get data, I previously made a video where I went through some of the most popular websites that you can use to generate data, and I will also put a link for that in the description, so you can go and take a look. It's that resource, actually that video is pretty useful. It goes over some real websites where you can download real world data. So if you're a data scientist or a data analyst or data engineer that is just wondering where to get data, then you can go through the resources that I mentioned in that video. But again, this is the file that we'll be using in this video. We have these columns here: order ID, order date, amount, order status, updated at, and these are our records. So we have about 20 records here without the header, and we will be loading this file to our S3. So let's actually go ahead and do that. I'm going to format the order date here so that it comes in as a date column here. So I'm just going to put it in this format here, and also the same thing with this one right here. I'm going to format this, put it as a date, with this format here, like so. Okay, and I will save it. And this is good because sometimes CSV will mess up with your file or Excel, and if you upload it the way it is, then it might not come, it might truncate some values there. Okay, so this will be our first file here, and what we'll do actually is this will be the first file, and after we run this file, so the first time we run it, we will have this file be stored in our snapshot history table, and then we'll come back and modify it. We will modify some records here, and we will run it back and see what happens when we make some changes to this file here. Okay, so I will go ahead and upload this file to S3. So I'm just going to upload it inside my orders folder here, and I will just upload this file right here. Okay, so this file is now, actually we need to upload it. This file is uploaded now. Again, you don't have to follow S3. If you don't have AWS, you don't have to do it the same way here. You can actually manually generate the data in Snowflake. You can use DDL, just create and insert the table, it doesn't matter. But for me, I'm just going to show you because Snowflake integrates very well with S3. So if you also have a scenario where you are integrating your Snowflake with AWS, then this video might be helpful. But if you don't have any of this, you can just either upload the file from your local folder or just create the data manually in your Snowflake Data Warehouse. Okay, so now that we have that data there, what we need to do is we need to load that data to Snowflake. So one thing I need to mention to you guys is DBT is not an ingestion tool. So what it does is it only transforms data that is already in your Snowflake Data Warehouse. So what I'm doing in this part of the video is basically ingesting the data to Snowflake, because without the data in Snowflake, then we cannot use DBT. All right, so it's important that you have your data already in your Snowflake Data Warehouse, or your data warehouse. If you're using any data warehouse, say BigQuery, Redshift, or any database, MySQL, Postgre, it doesn't matter. You have to have the data already in your data warehouse, and then DBT will take it over from there. So it's a transformation tool that will transform your data once you have the data in the data warehouse. Okay, so it's very important because I've gotten some questions of people wondering, how to get the data and whatnot. So it's important that you have your data in place already, and then after that DBT will take over. Okay, so now that I have my data in S3 here, what I will do is I will go over to Snowflake now, and I will open a new query window here. I'm going to bring this to a new tab or a new window altogether. Okay, so what we will do, we need to create our table first. Okay, so we need to create the staging table where our data will be living. Okay, so in this case, I have here the DDL here, and this is orders, and these are the columns that we had: order ID, order date, amount, order status, and updated data. Okay, actually, yeah, let's just make this one as data. I will transform it later. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this, and I'm creating this. Let's actually do this inside DBT ELT staging right here. Okay, we will create it inside there. It doesn't matter because I am anyway doing it here as this, but if you don't have it, you can just also select the database here, and then just go ahead and run this, and this is going to create your orders table inside staging. So if you go to staging now, you can see that we have orders table, and now what I will do after this is load that data from S3. And in order to load the data from S3 to your Snowflake table, you need to create a stage, and this is a stage in Snowflake. So to do that, you can do it with the console, or you can also use a query. If you're interested to know the whole process of creating staging and how to load your data from S3 to Snowflake, let me know. I can make a video on that. But basically, all you have to do is just go ahead and create a staging here, and this is how you do it. You create or replace the stage. In this case, I'm doing create or replace because I already have the stage. I just want to replace it, and we'll name it my S3 stage. You want to point it to the location in S3 where your data is. In this case, this is where our data is located in S3, and then you put the AWS keys. You can also use IAM roles if you have. I haven't created that, but if you're again interested, let me know, and then we can also do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this staging. This stage, and this stage will be created inside DBT ELT, so it will be created inside your database. Okay, so we have the stage here now, and it's pointing to our S3 location. So then the next thing we need to do is basically load the data now. So what we will be doing here is just load the data from S3 to Snowflake staging, and we are going to use copy. So we are going to do copy into DBT ELT staging orders from, and this will be from our stage, and we want to say here staging my S3, and we just want to point to the order data here in our S3 location, and that S3 file is actually right here. I think I have that window here. Okay, so this is our file, incoming data orders, yeah, order data 1 here. Okay, so this is a file that will be, so you just want to point it to the exact name of the file here. Okay, so I'm just then going to run that file now. So we'll just go ahead and copy this file, and this is going to copy that file, the entirety of it. Okay, so this should copy here. So this is now, you can see the status here. It has loaded, and it loaded 20 rows. So our staging table now should have data. Okay, so this is how it is. There we go. So our staging table now has 20 records here, you can see, and this is how the data looks like. Okay, so we have the order ID, and the order ID in this case is a unique field, and you can see it's up to number 20, and we have the order date, order amount, and the rest of this information. Okay, so this is the staging table now, and we want to create a snapshot table from this order table here. Okay, and we want to use DBT to do that. So how do we do that? So we have now our data in Snowflake. Let's now jump over to DBT and see how we can actually transform this data, or actually write DBT snapshot using this table that we have right here. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to my Visual Studio Code, and what I will do is I'm going to open a folder here in my repos. So I'm just going to go to repos here, and I'll go to Snowflake. That is the folder that we'll be using, and I'm just going to close these guys here. All right, so uh actually let's see here if we have, because we need to be inside okay, good, we need to be inside a virtual environment. Okay, so this is the folder here that we have here. This is I pre-created this folder, but basically I will walk you through what's happening in this folder. So this is my DBT Snowflake project here, and before I get deep into this, you may be wondering, how I came into this section here. I did a video previously where I went through the process of connecting DBT to Snowflake Data Warehouse. And in that video, I showed you how you can set up your project and connect to DBT. Connect DBT to Snowflake. And basically, I'm basically reusing that. I'm using part of that setup that I did in that video. And I will put the video in the description. So definitely watch it if you want to know how to connect DBT to Snowflake. But what you want to do is basically you want to create a Python virtual environment I've created here, and inside the Python virtual environment you want to install the adapter, the Snowflake adapter, DBT Snowflake, and also DBT core inside the virtual environment. And once you do that, all you have to do is then activate it. So in this case, I'm just going to activate my virtual environment here because I already installed the adapter there. So you can see here, and if you check this, I think it's pip freeze. If you check inside here, you will see that we should have DBT Snowflake here. So we have the DBT adapters, and the most important one is the DBT Snowflake, which is right here. Okay, so we have installed DBT Snowflake and also DBT core. So this is DBT CLI, which is the free version of DBT, and that's what we're using. If you're using DBT, the cloud version, then you don't need to do this. But DBT cloud version, I think with some tiers you have to pay. This one is free. You don't have to pay for this. So this is much easier and free to use. So again, if you are wondering how to install it, then you go ahead and watch that video. So what I will do here, I will just execute DBT debug to see if my connection to our data warehouse is good. Now you can see that this is actually working, and the setup that I did, I will quickly show you my profiles because there are some schemas there that we set up. So I'm just going to go and reveal here my DBT profiles here. So here, this is the DBT profiles, and these profiles it's basically a file that will create your connections to your various databases or data warehouses. So in this case, I had my Postgre here, commented it out here, and this is the Snowflake connection. So the profile, this is how your profile should be looking like for Snowflake. So you have your Snowflake project here, and the account, and the user that you're using to log in, your password, the role, and now this is important here, the database that you want to use. So in this case, we'll be using the DBT ELT database, and this schema here is actually the schema that DBT will be writing your data to once you run your DBT snapshots. Okay, so if you're running DBT snapshots or just basically DBT models, the schema that you specify in your profiles will be the one that DBT will be using to write your data to your Snowflake data warehouse. So let's go to our Snowflake data warehouse here, and you can see actually that we have here, this is the DBT ELT database that I mentioned there, and the staging here, I didn't mention it in the profiles, but what I mentioned was this one, the history, the hist schema. And this is what we will be writing our data to. Okay, so now that we have our connections checked, okay, so to check your connection, right, you just run DBT debug. It's going to go through your profiles, it's going to go through your DBT project here, make sure that it is configured properly. And you can see here, this is using the Snowflake profile, and then it's just making sure that even your password, the account that you have mentioned there, the role, the warehouse, all of them exist. And if all is good, then you will check, you'll get this message here, all checks passed. if anything is not configured properly, then you'll get an error right here. Okay, and as you can see here, it's using the profiles in this directory. So in your case, it might be something along the lines of users, and inside your users there's a .dbt where your profiles are located. Okay, so if you want to just check where the profiles is. All right, and then also it's going through your DBT project, making sure that everything is good, and then we have our check mark here, all checks passed. All right, so now we have our setup working properly. So how do we create a snapshot? Okay, so snapshots, when you create your folder, when you create your project, actually you will have this structure. So this, you'll have this project structures that DBT will give you: analysis, logs, the DBT packages, all of these models, seeds, snapshots. Now snapshots is where we have our snapshot models created, and this is this will tell DBT that you have snapshots in your environment, and it's going to go through this folder and run your snapshots that you've created. Okay, so what I have done in this video actually is I went ahead and created this model here inside my orders, and what this basically is doing is it's pointing to our source data. So if I go to my source here, schema.yaml here, what we're doing here is creating source YAML file that is pointing to our staging schema in Snowflake. And we're doing this because we want to bring the orders table inside staging, right? So it's pointing there, and now I'm using this table inside this staging here. And again, I'm not materializing this table as inside my data warehouse. I just want to do some basic transformation, so that's why I did here the materialization as ephemeral. And if you're interested to learn about materialization, I can do another video in future where we go through a deep dive into materialization in DBT. But basically what my materialization is how DBT will be creating your data in your target. Okay, so in this case we are not going to be creating this, but we have other materialization like table, view. I think we have materialized view also in some databases that support it, but for ephemeral, this one is just going to be a CTE, and this is good if you want to just do some basic transformations and use it later in your model. So in this case, we are going to be using this model here inside our snapshots. That's why we are creating it right here in the models. So all I'm doing in this model here is basically bringing the data here, and actually before we save this, what I want to do here is inside this we want to do into to timestamp. So I want to transform this to timestamp column, all right, like so, and we want to save it as updated at, okay, and then just save it. Okay, so basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that this updated at column, if it's a date, it should be converted to a timestamp, because DBT will be using this, snapshots will be using this field to track our data. Okay, and then so here I'm just saying, you know, go to Snowflake source and get the data, get the orders table right there. So okay, so this is, you know, there's nothing fancy going on here. We're just doing very basic transformation, and transformation is anything. If you're just changing the data types, if you're changing the column types, if you are changing the data types, it doesn't matter. Or if you're doing joins and all of that, that is what transformation is. So it can be as basic as this or as massive as you want it to be. Okay, so we have our staging model here now, and now the next thing that we want to do here is now move over to our snapshots. Okay, so inside our snapshots we have I have here two folders created right here. Okay, so the first one I've created here is orders check, and what this one is doing is it will be using the check strategy, the one we went through earlier in this video, and I want to show both of them, right? I want to show both of the strategies here. So the orders check here will be using the check strategy, and the timestamp will be using the timestamp strategy. So let's take a look at the check strategy first, and this is how you configure check strategy. All right, so you just do the snapshot command here. This is common across all snapshots. If you want to create snapshots, you have to put this command here, to signify that you are creating a snapshot. So you have to put the snapshot command here and then the name of the snapshot table. So this will be right here. Orders hist check will be the name of the table that will be created inside your target database. So in this case, the hist schema, we will have, when we run our snapshot, we will have a table called orders underscore hist check. Now when you scroll down now, the configuration section of this now is very important, right? So this is where you configure how you want this snapshot to be created, right? So here you can see that we have our target schema here as hist schema. Okay, you don't have to do this because you have it in your profiles, but you know, if you don't have it there, you might want to put it here. Okay, or if you want to change the destination, you can also put it here. And then the unique ID is also important, right? You have to put the unique ID for your table, and this the DBT will be using this to also track changes in your table. So order ID here is unique, and make sure that it's actually unique, right? And now the strategy here is what is important here, right? Strategy here is the check strategy. So like we mentioned, what this check strategy will be doing is it's going to scan all of these fields right here. It's going to scan the fields that you mentioned here. So order ID, order date, amount, order status, all of this. And if there's any change in any of these fields, then DBT will retire. It's basically going to fashion your data and create new records. So the first time that you run this snapshot, and this applies to the timestamp strategy as well. The first time you run it, it's going to create the additional fields DBT valid from DBT valid to, and then for DBT valid to, it's going to be all nulls. Now the subsequent runs, if you run it again in future, or the next time that you run, it's going to now scan that existing table and see if there's any change in the incoming data, and if there is, then it's going to use the ID and then also the columns that you have specified here. So basically it's going to use the ID, and if there's any change in any of the columns, and if there is, then it's going to retire the older ones and then just create a new column with the new data here. Okay, so that's how the check strategy will be working here. And as you go down here, you also have to timestamp here. I'm actually not going to do it here because we already have it changed inside our updated ads. Okay, so this is also one of the best practice when doing DBT snapshots. They recommend that you don't do massive transformations inside your snapshots. Okay, if you want, you can do it before that, and that's what I did here, right? I want to make sure that I do my transformations before we send it over to snapshots. Okay, so right here I'm just going to pull the records, and now what's important here is you can see this one is not using source, it's just referencing the staging schema, sorry, the staging model, which is what we have right here. Okay, so you can see how this one is you can reuse models, right? So if you want to reuse another model, then you can use this ref function here. So this ref function basically will call other models that are in your structure or in your project. So in this case, we are saying we want to snapshot this table, and we want to use the transformations and the source from our staging schema. Okay, so that is what you have right here. All right, and that's it. Basically, you don't have much here. And now when we run this model here, it's going to create a table inside hist schema in Snowflake, and the name of the table will be called orders underscore hist underscore check. Okay, so just make a note of this because we will be looking into that when we run this snapshot. Now I also want to walk you through the other strategy, and that is the timestamp strategy. So I create another folder here, and this is how the strategy, the timestamp strategy will be looking like. This is how the configuration will be looking like if you're using it. Okay, so again, I went ahead and created the snapshot here, and also put the name of the snapshot table. So in this case, it will be underscore hist underscore timestamp, and the configurations for this will be like this. So you have your target schema here. Again, this will be in Snowflake, and it will be under hist schema, and the unique ID will still be order ID. The strategy now will be changing to timestamp, and when you do that, you want to put the updated ads. So updated ads will actually, it's just a Snowflake, sorry, a DBT snapshot timestamp strategy field. So this is required, updated that, and here you want to put the name of the column. So this can be something else. It could be updated date, updated call, doesn't matter. So it's just, it just happened that the data that I'm using has updated that column. So this can be just any other column. It doesn't have to be updated at. Or you can even have change at, doesn't matter. All right, so this is the field now that this model will be using to track your changes. And again, like we mentioned, with timestamp strategy, DBT will only be looking at this. And if there's a change in this field here, what it's going to do is it's going to bring the changes for that data, put it into your snapshot and fashion, basically retire the old ones and bring in the new ones, and then from there you can proceed running a Snowflake snapshots. Okay, so that is a major difference between the timestamp strategy and the check strategy. Check strategy uses timestamp. Check strategy uses check to scan the columns for any changes, and timestamp will be using timestamp column, and this timestamp column should be actually changing whenever there are any changes in your data. So just very important to know that. And then from here, I'm actually also not going to do that because we are still using our staging model to bring data in from our source. Okay, so both of these are pretty similar. The only thing that is changing here is the strategy. All right, so now how do we run this? Okay, so before we run it, let's actually go over to our history schema here. This is the history schema inside our DBT ELT database, and as you can see, we don't have any data here. So when we run this, we expect actually to have two tables created here, one for check and one for timestamp. So let's do that. All right, so to now run this, you can actually now make sure that you have your environment activated, and all you have to do here is just come right here and type DBT snapshot. Okay, so DBT snapshot will run all of the snapshots inside your environment. If you just want to run selected, or just if you don't want to run everything really, then you can come here and do DBT snapshot select, and then just you can select the one that you want to run. So in this case, let's if you do DBT orders check like this and run it, it's going to run for DBT orders check. And probably let's start with that. But again, if you want to run everything at once, then you don't have to do this. You can just do DBT snapshot and run it. But let's start with the check one and just analyze it quickly. So DBT snapshot select, and I'm just going to do this one, orders check. Okay, so this is going to run the first one in this case, this one here. Okay, so let's do that. So you can see it is now running and successfully completed. So you can see it just ran only this check one, and as you can see also it has completed running successfully. This means that our table now should have been created in Snowflake. So let's switch over to Snowflake now, and if you refresh this one here, there we go. So you can see now we have additional table created here with orders hist check here. Now we can query this. You can just go ahead here and you can scan actually the columns here. You can see we have now additional columns. We only head up to here, and we have additional 4 columns that DBT created, and these are the columns that DBT will now be using to track our data. Okay, so let's go ahead and query this data right here. Okay, so you can query this data. This is how your data will be looking like. And now take a look at this, right? So this is the very first time we run, and our snapshot table now is created, and 20 records were created. So it brought all of the records from our staging table and put them into our snapshot table. And now in this snapshot table, you can see that we have additional columns here: DBT SCD ID, DBT updated at, DBT valid from, DBT valid to. So you can see these 2 columns are the important ones right here. I mean, these are also important if you're interested, but these are the most interesting ones here: DBT valid from, DBT valid to, and this will be the ones that will be changing whenever data changes on this column. So you can see now everything is null right now. The next time now that we modify any of the value here, this is check strategy, so we made it so that if any of these fields changes, then we should be able to bring new additional records here. Like we retire it, and then we basically bring in the new fashion. Okay, so you will see now when, for example, for order ID 1, if say the status changes from processing to shipped, then it will retire the processing one and it will record here DBT valid 2, and then it will give you the DBT valid 2 as null for the new record here. So you will see this in a, when we make changes to this record. Okay, so we have this check strategy now here created, and the next one that we want to run is the second one here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just run the one for orders timestamp, and you will see how that one also will behave. So when you run this, it's going to create orders hist timestamp column in our warehouse, and when we come back here, refresh this. Okay, so you can see that we have a table here now, orders hist timestamp. If you inspect it, you will see that we have the same columns also with the additional DBT tracking columns created here. And if we go here, you query this, it should be pretty similar to the other one as well. Okay, so you go here, check it, you have your 20 records created, and also DBT valid 2 is still null here in this case. So now the juicy part now comes in. We want to make changes to the data in our staging, and then we'll run again our snapshot and see what happens. Okay, so to do that, I'm actually going to go back to our file, and we will make some changes to that file. So I'm going to go back to the local file that we had, right, which was right here. So this file here, what I will do is I will strip the first 4 records, and I will modify this. So I'll strip up to here, I will strip them, and what I will do is I will create a new folder here. I will create a new file here, right? I will create a new file here like so. Okay, and yeah, so what I will do on this one is, let's start with the timestamp strategy. We will change this to 2025. I will just change this to 2025, 2025, 2025, right, and 2025 like so. So this, in this case, just the timestamp is changing. None of these other ones are changing, right? So we'll run this and see what happens when we run our tape. Okay, so I'm going to save this one here. I'm going to save this file, order data to, yeah, like that. Okay, and then I'm just going to upload it here. Okay, so like I mentioned again, you don't have to do this. You can just basically insert the data directly to your Snowflake. But if you're interested in this process, then this is how you do it. And then we go back to Snowflake now. Let's copy that data. So we just need to modify this one because we already have our stage created. So it's always listening to the files that are inserted there. And then we're just going to copy this. Okay, so you can see now we have additional 4 records inserted here. And if you're interested, you can query that data and just see that we have additional records added. You can see for order ID 1, we have the only thing that changed here is the date. Okay, so you can see we have 2025 as the updated at. The same thing with the second one and the third one as well. Only the updated at changed. So let's go back here now, and let's see what happens with the timestamp strategy, right? So if you go to timestamp, we will just go ahead and rerun this timestamp. Okay, so we'll start with that, and let's see what happens. Okay, so we'll go ahead and run timestamp. Okay, and what you will expect is when your timestamp is created, we should be able to see some changes definitely in our history table. So let's see what those changes are. So we go back now. We have, so what this does is it's not going to truncate your existing table. It's just going to now start fashioning it in real time because it already has the metadata for it. So let's go and actually query now. If we go here and just query and order by ID, let's see what happens. Okay, all right, there we go. So you can see now that we have additional we have now some values here in DBT valid 2. And let me just scroll to the left here. So if you see, right, for order ID number 1, you see the processing, nothing else has changed, right? Nothing else has changed except the updated that. So you can see now the older one, which was 2024, has been retired. So this expired on this date, and now the new one, which has this timestamp, is our new record. Okay, so like we mentioned in the beginning, DBT snapshot using timestamp strategy will retire the older timestamps and basically give you the latest one. So if you have data that you just want to get the latest records, then you can use this timestamp strategy to only pull the latest one. So this is how this is how this one looks like, and the same thing with ID number 2. You can see with this one, the older one was retired, so this one expired on this date, and now the null one basically means active. So this is the active record now, which came in on this date, right? And the same thing with this one here. I think we added up to number 4 only, right? Like so. Okay, so this is how it is for this one, and you know, this is how DBT timestamp strategy looks like. So let's also now run for the other one, for the check strategy, right? Let's see what happens there. For check strategy, if any of the column will be fashioned. Okay, so we do that, and then we come here and we want to query check right here. So check strategy, we run it, and as you can see, nothing has happened, right? Can you guess why that's a guess? Okay, right, yeah. So the reason why this one did not change is because we specified in our check that whenever there is a change, right, whenever there is a change in any of these columns here, order ID, order date, order amount, order status, whenever there is a change, then we want to only fashion the data. But in this case, the only thing that changed was that updated that, and we were not tracking this. So if we actually were tracking updated that, then we could have had changes here. So that's also one other thing that you want to probably make a note, that if you want to if you're interested in making sure that if any of the fields is changed, then you update it, then you can also include updated data. Okay, so yeah, so that's just one thing that you can make a note, that if you do updated data, then it's also going to now fashion it. Okay, we didn't do that, so nothing happens. So let's actually now add a value, right? Let's add more data, and we are going to modify this file again, and we want to modify the rest of the other ones, right? So we will take from number 5, let's say, up to number 9, right? Copy that, and I'm going to create a new file for this. Okay, like so, and we will also put the fields up there for this, which is this one here. Okay, so we'll put the fields here. All right, so what we will do on this file here, let me just zoom this one in. What I will do here is we will change the status for this. Okay, so instead of shipped, let's say this one was returned, maybe shipped. Actually, this one, let's say this one was delivered now because it was shipped, and we will not make any changes to it here. Depending, I mean, yeah, you can make the changes here, but you know, I just want to show you, because we're not tracking this, but you know, in a real world, this one should also change, right? The pending one, we will say this one is processing, and for the delivered one, let's say the customer said, yeah, I want to return this, and then also for this one, we'll return it. For processing, we say this one is shipped. Okay, so this is for ID number 5 through 9. So let's now save this, and I'm going to save this one as order data 3, and this will be a CSV file. Okay, and then I'll close this. All right, so we'll go ahead and update this, upload this to S3. Okay, we'll upload this file here, like so. There we go. And now we'll go ahead and also load this file to our Snowflake. So we'll just change the file here, order data tree now. This will bring that latest file with the records that are there. Okay, so it brought those 5 records, and now we have our 5 records. You can still confirm your data here if you want. Let's pull this down. Yeah, if you want, you can just run this and confirm that you have probably around 29 records now. Yes. Okay, so, and you can see now for like ID number 5, we changed some values here, and this one, ID number 6, the same thing, number 7, the same thing, right? So let's now proceed and run our check strategy and see what happens, right? So we have orders check now, and we made some changes on that. So let's see what happens when we run the check strategy in this case. Okay, so we do that, check strategy, we run it, and we should be able to see some changes now in our snapshot table. Okay, so it updated some data there. So let's go ahead now and check our snapshot check table right here, which is this one here, orders is checked. We run this right here. Okay, let's see now if we see anything interesting, right? Okay, so you can see for ID number 5, there is a value now in DBT value 2, which is this date, and this is the date that this one was changed, and now the new status here is delivered to, which is the most recent one right here. The same thing with number 6. You have now the previous one which was pending, the status was pending, that one has been retired, and the new one is now null, which is the most recent status. Same thing with number 7 and number 8. Okay, order number 8 and number 9 right there. Okay, so whenever there is any value change, that changes, in that case we only change the status, right? And we were tracking status, so because we were doing that, then we retired the old one, the old status, and created a new record. So this is how type 2 works, right? You can see we are creating a new record and keeping the previous one. We are fashioning the old one. We are saying the old one is no longer recent. The recent one now is this one in this case, the new value, which has the return status. Okay, so this is how the type 2 works, right? In snapshots, in DBT snapshots. The old one, you keep the records, we maintain the older records, and we just create a new record with the latest record status right here. Okay, so I mean, if you have the only downside with this is your table might grow. It might grow because you're keeping the history, so it might grow larger and larger. So if you have issues with storage, then this might not be the case. This might not be ideal, but if storage is not issues, then if storage is not an issue to you, then you can do this. Okay, so that is how the snapshot check strategy works. Let's run the other one for temp and see if anything changed. If you just run for timestamp, because we didn't change timestamp, then I don't expect anything here to change in our history table, because nothing changed. So if we just ran there and let's go and check it, the status should still be the same as it was before for this case, right? Okay, so you can see in the timestamp strategy we have we didn't get anything for the rest of the other fields, right? We had number 7, number 8, number 9 changed, but we don't see them here because we didn't change the updated timestamp here. This field did not change, so DBT did not see any change, and therefore it didn't fashion the data. Okay, so you can see the difference between those two, the check strategy and the timestamp strategy, and you can now decide which one is best for you. If you used the timestamp, just make sure that this one is always changing. If you use the check strategy, then make sure that you want to track all the fields that you want the changes to happen at. In our case, we might have wanted to add the updated at because we also want to track that in our check strategy, but that is just an example of how the check strategy works. Okay, so this is how the snapshot strategy works in DBT, guys, and you can see it's just a basic type 2, and if you are wondering on how to implement type 2 in your environment, I will encourage you to try DBT because it makes the logic very easy, and how you can track your changes in your data warehouse. If you were to write a type 2 SQL query, you will end up writing a very massive SQL query, and it might not be efficient. So DBT will make the life much easier for you if you want to implement type 2 in your environment. So definitely give it a try and let me know how that one goes. Alright guys, so that's all I had for you in this video. I know this video went longer than I expected, but I hope it was comprehensive enough for you to understand how DBT Snapshot works and how you can implement it in your environment. Alright, so I hope this video was helpful, and if it was, please give thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Alright guys, I will see you then in the next video. Bye bye.